Okay, it says we are live. Let me double check. I am in the right group. Yep, there I am. Hey, everybody. All right, let's get started. All right, let me put my phone down over here. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. So we are going into, this is week one of our virtual book club and cooking class. And of course, it's all about breast health because we are in Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So I usually, for the last several years, I have been offering these classes in my community here locally. And I'm invited to different places just to teach women about how to eat more of a plant-strong diet, how to get more fruits and vegetables and whole plants into their diet, and to teach about how this helps us with our breast health. And so, of course, this year is a little different because of everything that's going on with the pandemic. And so I actually now thought to myself, it's not going to stop me from teaching this class. I can actually teach it virtually, and therefore I can actually reach more women with it. So this actually works out pretty well. So I'm glad that you guys are all joining us. I have my phone down here. So if you guys have any questions throughout, please feel free to post them, and I'm going to stop periodically and I'm going to answer the questions. So let me just double check. I am on there. All right, great. And it looks like, so this is really cool. I'm looking on my phone. I have never seen this before, but I have subtitles on my video. I don't know how that actually came up. So that's pretty cool. I've never done a video that has subtitles on it. So that's awesome. All right. So by now, most of you, if you're joining us for the book club, have purchased your book, okay? This is the book that we are reading for the month, and this is Breasts, the Owner's Manual, and this is by Dr. Kristi Funk. I recommend that every woman owns this book. I don't care if you've had breast cancer, you haven't had breast cancer, you have no family history of breast cancer, you do have family history of breast cancer. This book is for every woman. Even if you're not going to join us for the book club, that is fine. I really encourage you to buy this book, and it's a great book. It's a great book to reference. As you can see, I don't know if you guys can tell, but I have tons of these little Post-its. Does anybody else do that when you read a book? I am the highlighter queen, and I am like crazy with my Post-its. They're everywhere. I always look at it like this. If I get done with a book and I haven't highlighted pretty much every page or bookmarked something with my little Post-its, it wasn't probably worth reading again or keeping. But as you can see, this book was well worth the read. In fact, I purchased it the first year it came out, and I have read it every single year since then. It's a great refresher, but also it helps me because I teach these classes every single year. So again, it's a great reference book. I really recommend that every woman own this. Now, this was the first edition that came out. Your cover might look a little different if you purchased it last year or this year. Yours might have two lemons might be on the cover. So they had changed out the cover. This was the original cover, and I think they've changed it out, but it's the same book. Everything inside the book is exactly the same. So your cover might look different, but don't worry, it's the same book. One of the things that really impressed me with this book was all of the research that Dr. Funk did for this book. And in the back, she includes all of the references. And I'm going to show you, my goodness, it is so many pages. Like, okay, I don't know if you guys can see, but like all of these pages are the scientific references that she uses, that she used for when she wrote the book. I am a science geek, okay? So I am really big with, don't tell me what to do, tell me why I need to do it. And if you've ever gone through any of my courses or any of my programs, you know that I'm a firm believer in sharing with you the science behind why whole food plant-based nutrition is really the best nutrition for us, especially as women as we age. Science of human behavior shows us that if you know why you're being asked to make these changes, you're more likely to stick with it. So if you want to know why, she gives it to you all in the back. So if you're like me and you just love to dig deep into the science of all of it, she gives you all the references. If you could care less and you're just like, hey, Kelly, just tell me exactly what to do, read the book. This is a great book to read and follow along as we go with the book club. If you have no time to read the book, you can download the audio version. I know that that's a great option for people that are busy. It probably isn't the most ideal because you can't do like highlighting and and doing your bookmarking like this if you're doing the audio. But if it's the only way that you're going to consume the material, then by all means, just do the audio. So this is a great book. Another thing that I absolutely loved about Dr. Funk, and I've seen her talk about this a lot in some of her podcasts that she does and some interviews that she does. When she first started writing the book, now again, she's a breast cancer surgeon, and she's actually got some high profile clients. Sheryl Crow is one of them, Angelina Jolie is another. And so she, for years, she was eating herself, and she was also telling her patients to eat a Mediterranean diet. So when she set out to write this book, she set out to prove that the Mediterranean diet was actually the healthiest diet to eat for breast health, because that was the diet she herself was eating, and a diet that she had been telling her clients to do for years. And that's also the diet she kind of touched upon very, very, very small amount of time in medical school. So that's just kind of what she did. Well, when she started to dig into the research, she was just blown away with the information that's out there that tells us that a whole food plant-based diet really is the absolute best diet for overall health, but also to reduce our risk of developing a lot of cancers, but especially breast cancer. She was so blown away with how much science is out there showing that she immediately, while researching for the book, immediately herself went whole food plant-based and also changed over her whole family's diet. So I thought that was really impressive, because it was not even the diet that she was setting out to prove was the best diet to eat. She ate a different diet. Now, Mediterranean is similar to, I would say it's probably one of the most similar to whole food plant-based, but it does still include animal protein. And if you read in the book, about what she talks about with animal protein and cancer, it is really something that we really need to be avoiding, especially as we age, especially as women who are already going through perimenopause or menopause, and we're already dealing with hormone issues. And the Mediterranean diet is also very high in oils, and she talks again about that in the book, and we're going to touch on that in another week. So, but again, very impressive book. So definitely get this. Every woman should have this. Whoops. So if you guys have any questions, just post them below. All right. And I know a lot of people are going to be watching this on the replay, so that's fine too. You can watch it whenever it's good for you. All right. So if you signed up for the class, you should have gotten an email this morning in your inbox. And in it would have the recipe we're making today, and also just some information about the book club for the week. If you did not get that email, please reach out to me and let me know so that I can make sure we have your email address correct. Check in your spam folder, and also if you have like a promotions folder, like if you have a Gmail, check in there, because sometimes they go into those email inboxes. But check and see if you have it in there. Okay. So if you got the email today, you know that we are going to be talking about, we're going to read, there's 4 parts to the book. For the month of October, we are really just going to focus on parts 1, 2, and 3, and those are the prevention parts of the book. A lot of focus we're going to put on part 2, because that's the nutrition part of it. That's my wheelhouse. That's what I'm most passionate about teaching women. And it's also the thing, our nutrition is the thing that we do every single day. We eat multiple times a day, right? And every time we eat, we either have the option to be feeding disease, right? Or we can not be feeding disease. And we make that choice, we make that decision multiple times a day. So to me, it's a no-brainer. Let's work on our nutrition, right? So again, we're going to focus on the first 3 parts of the book, but obviously definitely make time to read the 4th part of the book, because it has lots of really great information in it too, especially if you are a woman who has already been diagnosed and you are concerned about your reoccurrence for breast cancer. So definitely recommend you read the whole book. All right, so we are going to focus a lot on our recipes that we do are all in her top 10 breast superfoods. The top 10 superfoods that she feels, after all of her research that she did, are the healthiest foods we should be eating for our breast health. So each week when we go through and I'm going to show you how to make a recipe. That recipe was specifically chosen because it includes ingredients from that top 10 list. So if you're interested in that top 10 list, you would go to page 49 through 55. And of course, I have my little post-it in there. And it goes through for you the top 10 breast health superfoods. One thing I want to also talk about is, because I know for some people, they're not actually going to be reading the book. They're just going to kind of hop in and catch, I'm going to call this like the Cliff Notes version each week when we do these little cooking classes. So I want to include for you a couple of different things. I'm going to go through and I'm going to give you my highlighter verse for the week, or my excerpt from the book that really stood out to me, that I think is very powerful and sums up a lot of what might have been in some of the chapters that I had read that week. So I'm going to share that with you. Now, of course, inside of this private Facebook group, I invite you guys you can do that too. Like like I did that this week. I took a picture of one of the pages that's highlighted, and it's like my highlighter moment or my highlighter excerpt. Share that too. I'd love to know what you guys are thinking and what really stands out to you. So there is a lot. When I first read this book, and now remember, when I read this book a couple years ago, I had already been many years into my whole food plant-based journey. And even some of the stuff I was reading, I was just blown away with the statistics. So I would love to know what stands out to you guys and what you find to be helpful. So this week's excerpt that I want to read to you, and because I'm quoting her, it's really important to me that I make sure I don't jumble her words or paraphrase them. So I'm going to read directly the quote from the book. So let me just tell you what I have here. So she is quoted as saying, based on my experience as a board-certified breast cancer surgeon who has helped tens of thousands of women navigate breast health issues, I know for a fact that we have the power to reduce our breast cancer risk in achievable and dramatic ways. Enter our second big problem with breast cancer awareness: erroneous public perception. Most women believe that family history and genetics determine who gets breast cancer. But for most people, they don't. Inherited mutations like BRCA only cause 5 to 10% of breast cancer. In fact, 87% of women diagnosed with breast cancer do not have a single first-degree relative with breast cancer. I thought that was very interesting. For the last 30 years, the medical community has not corrected the false notions held by the majority of breast cancer survivors who attribute their breast cancer entirely to family history, environmental factors, stress, or fate. All factors predominantly not under their direct control. Yet research tells us that if before reaching menopause, women embrace a lifestyle that prioritizes exercise, not smoking, not drinking alcohol, and a diet shifted away from meat and dairy toward a whole food, plant-based diet, their odds of getting breast cancer are slashed in half. And for older women, the risk drops by 80%. Those numbers are just a fact. Like I always talk, like that's like a mind blown moment when I read that, right? So we have so much more control over our health than we have ever been led to believe. So I would love to know, please feel free to post in the comments below what stood out to you this week in any of the pages that you read, any of the chapters. Remember, we're all reading on our own time. So it's not like you get assigned chapters to read. So we're reading on our own timeline. So please feel free, drop in the comments below if there was anything that you read that you was really powerful to you this week, that maybe you highlighted yourself in the book. I would love to know. All right. So I want to ask you a question too. I am curious to know, this is this week's question. And again, feel free to post in the comments below. I want to know, what were your beliefs about the role of genetics and family history as it pertains to breast cancer before you read this book or before you started to read this book? I would love to know. So post in the comments below. That's our question this week, our discussion question. All right. So let's talk a little bit, before we get into the recipe, let's talk a little bit about some key things about a whole food plant-based diet. Number one, a whole food plant-based diet. People say, what do you mean by whole food plant-based? Okay, so plant-based really is a diet that shifts away from animal products. So a diet that shifts away from meat including red meat, including things like chicken, seafood. We kind of try to start eliminating things like dairy. That would include things like cheese and yogurt and milks. We also try to keep any processed foods out of there. So, you know, those chips maybe that we're buying that might not have animal product in it, it's not really a whole food. So it's not very healthy for you. There are a lot of ingredients that they add to our foods that are not good for our breast health. So what do we mean by plant foods? Well, basically, we're talking about things like fruits, vegetables, dark leafy greens, nuts, seeds, whole grains, things like potatoes, sweet potatoes, beans, lentils. And when I say beans, all kinds of beans, all colors of beans. When I say lentils, same thing, all different. There's tons of different types of lentils, different colors of lentils. So a diet that really focuses a lot on those foods. That's really what a whole food plant-based diet is. Why do we do that? Well, the science is clear on this. First of all, women are deficient in fiber. Fiber is the one thing you can only get from plants, and we are deficient. About up to 97% of the population is deficient in fiber. And so fiber is really what goes through our body, kind of works like a scrub brush through our body. And that's how we kind of get rid of a lot of our toxins that we're taking in throughout the day, is kind of goes out through our poop. So we're not getting enough fiber in our diet. That's the first thing. The other thing is, in all of these plant foods, there's something that naturally occurs in these plant foods, and that's called phytochemicals, or sometimes you'll see it referred to as phytonutrients, which is probably what you'll hear me refer to it a lot as. These are naturally occurring chemicals in the plant that protects them out in nature. And those are the chemicals that when we eat the plants, it protects us as well. These are our anti-cancer fighting chemicals. It prevents us from developing a lot of chronic diseases. It helps us maintain healthy weight. It also is actually anti-aging. These phytonutrients in these plant foods are literally anti-aging. So you're going to slow down your aging process just by including more whole plant foods in your diet. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about whole plant foods. Imagine your produce department. Start getting really familiar with your produce department. We don't need all these, all these supplements that they try to sell us, these pills, these powders, these gels. We don't need any of that. We just need whole plant foods like this broccoli right here. So I get emails all the time. Kelly, what supplements do you recommend? I don't recommend any supplements at all. I know that doesn't sound really sexy. I know that probably doesn't make somebody a whole lot of money. But really, if you're not every single time you go to the grocery store loading your cart with mostly whole fresh plants like this, no supplement in the world is going to help you out. So I really focus on teaching women how to eat these plants in their most natural state, things you can just buy at your grocery store. You do not have to start shopping someplace special. You just have to start going into your produce department in your grocery store. Skip the gels, skip the special powders. You don't have to do any of that. That's a waste of money. All right. So this week, and again, you should have received an email with the recipe. If you did not, please reach out to me and let me know, and I'll make sure I add you to the email list. But again, make sure you've checked your spam folder. But you should have gotten the recipe that we're making. It is apple broccoli salad. So we are going to make that because it includes 4 of her breast health superfoods. So let's go through the first one. So first of all, this recipe includes cruciferous vegetables, and that's actually number 1 on her breast health. So superfoods. So if you go to page 50, cruciferous vegetables, this would include broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, turnips, radish, watercress, kale, arugula, collards, bok choy, and Swiss chard. So the phytochemicals or the phytonutrients in these types of vegetables, in your cruciferous vegetables and your leafy greens, okay, they are the primary reason for your breast cancer reduction. In order to get the most bang for your broccoli, eat it lightly steamed or raw. So that's why actually today's recipe is going to be raw broccoli. If you don't like raw broccoli, by all means, feel free. You can lightly steam the broccoli first. The one thing that we want to make sure of is you want to make sure that when you're eating raw fruits and vegetables, like today with this raw broccoli, you are chewing it a lot. And the reason for that is because those phytonutrients are activated more when it mixes, the longer it mixes with your saliva. So if you're a fast eater, I encourage you to start slowing down and counting your how many times you chew your food. I recommend to my clients you should be chewing a piece of food a minimum of 20 chews. I know that sounds like a lot, especially when you're sitting there, but I promise you, your digestion will thank you for that. But you're also getting more benefit from the chemicals in that plant food and those nutrients. So slow down and start to chew your food a little bit more, especially when it's going to be raw vegetables like this. Okay, so it talks about, so a lot of times you're going to read these really big, fancy chemical names. Don't get overwhelmed with that. But in broccoli, the main chemical in it that scientists have studied is sulforaphane, okay? And so that's the power, that cancer-fighting powerhouse phytonutrient in most of your cruciferous vegetables, especially in something like broccoli, really high in those sulforaphanes, okay? So that's number 1. Number 2, in her superfood is dietary fiber. So I just mentioned before, fiber only comes from plant food. You're not going to get it in your meats. You're not going to get it in your dairy. You're not going to get it anywhere else other than your plant food. Fiber. And most people are walking around fiber deficient. So she says here in her book, think whole grains, beans, and veggies. Estrogen feeds and fuels 80% of all breast cancers. Unfortunately, most women don't know this fact, or that estrogen can be suppressed with a targeted diet. Fiber crushes cancer's dreams when it binds estrogen and toxins in your gastrointestinal tract because you poop them out. It improves insulin sensitivity and releases a litany of antioxidant vitamins and anti-cancer compounds. High vegetable intake even quells the more aggressive estrogen-negative tumors. Strive to consume more than 30 grams of fiber per day to decrease your breast cancer risk by as much as 50%, ladies. I'm going to say that again because it's so important. You want to aim for consuming more than 30 grams of fiber per day to decrease your breast cancer risk by as much as 50%. That's in half, okay? Even just 20 grams gives you a 15% cancer reduction. So every little bit counts. What does 30 grams look like? It's 3 to 5 servings a day of high fiber foods. So she gives some examples here. A cup of boiled split peas, lentils, black beans, lima beans, baked beans, green peas, a cup of broccoli, 1 avocado, half of a passion fruit, 1 medium artichoke, a cup of raspberries, most berries, but raspberries are pretty high in fiber. So it's really easy, as you can see, like you can get the fiber in your diet pretty easily. It's not that hard to do. So she says here that many American adults fail to consume enough daily fiber. In fact, she's quoted as saying it's up to 97% of people do not eat enough fiber. Okay, so that is number 3. Excuse me, that's number 2. The number 3 ingredient is apples. Okay, so apples are going to be in this recipe, and she talks about, can an apple a day keep breast cancer away? It seems so. The phytochemicals in all apple peels, and especially in red apples, work against every metabolic pathway cancers try to take, at least in animal models. Daily apple eaters, and she mentions not pie, by the way, not apple pie, have a 24% less breast cancer risk than those eating fewer apples. Extracts from the peel stop cancer cells in the lab 10 times more effectively than from the flesh of the same apples. So eat them whole or blended, just not juiced, okay? And then the other ingredient here that's going to be in this recipe, and actually is in most of my recipes, so for those of you that are in our membership and have access to our recipe library, you will quickly see that garlic is in pretty much almost every recipe that I have, any salad recipe or any dinner recipe. Thankfully, it's not any of the dessert recipes. But garlic will be in this recipe, and that is another category of breast superfoods: garlic, onions, leeks, shallots, chives, and scallions. So she talks about how you can crush them, chop them, blend them, and they're immunity boosting bulbs. And they really need to be fresh. So don't be buying powdered garlic. I always recommend fresh, and we're going to go through that when I go through the ingredients with you. And the phytochemical in the garlic, a study showed that 75% drop in breast cancer with 11 to 12 weekly servings of these types of vegetables: is garlic, onions, leeks, shallots. So that was in a 11 to 12 weekly servings of these vegetables, such as garlic and onions. So definitely garlic is a breast superfood. So make sure you're including that in your diet. All right, and we're gonna go on, we're gonna make this recipe today. There are other, there are other superfoods that she includes in her list, but we're gonna go through those next week and the week after. Okay, so let's get started on our recipe, our apple broccoli salad. Again, guys, if you have any questions, just post them below. I think this is the coolest thing. I'm watching you guys on my phone here, and there's subtitles. Again, I've never had that before, so I don't even know I guess maybe that's a new Facebook thing. I'm not really sure. All right, so the first thing that you want to do when you are cooking in the kitchen, you want to get out all of your ingredients, okay? So I start out with getting my recipe. And again, for those of you that are in our membership and have access to all of our plant-based recipes, you can just pull it up on your phone because everything can be done right through the app. So that makes it really easy. But if you're not, you can just print it out like this, whatever works for you. And I always get it through and make sure I have the ingredients, and I get all the ingredients out first. You can't see right now because of the angle of the camera, but I have all the ingredients laid out. So that's what I recommend you do whenever you're cooking, is make sure you're putting all of your ingredients out before you actually start to do the recipe. Because you probably, if you don't do that, there's a good chance that you have an ingredient that you're not going to have in your house, and you may not be able to make the recipe. So always lay out everything first. The other thing that I want to say about all of the ingredients is, please make sure you buy as much organic as possible. So those of you that have gone through my 5-week nutrition course for women in midlife, you know how much I preach buying organic whenever you possibly can. I have a whole module in that course that talks about why it's important and how to buy organic. But really, it is, and we're going to learn a little bit more because actually Dr. Funk talks about this in her book as well. So we're going to do a little more about this in a future week. But in the meantime, just try to be buying as much organic as you possibly can. When you buy organic, you're avoiding all of the herbicides, the fungicides, the pesticides, everything that they spray and add to our food, okay? So, and those things are not good for our overall health, they're not good for our hormone health, and they're certainly not good for our breast health. So we definitely want to try to avoid those as much as possible. Now, some people might say, oh, well, it's too expensive. I can't buy organic for everything. And that's fine. I will tell you that organic is pretty easy to come by nowadays. When you can walk into your local Walmart and they have an organic section, I mean, it's pretty easy to come by nowadays. But if it is something that your budget just doesn't allow for, that's okay too. One of the tips that I give is just think about the things that you eat, let's say on a daily basis. So an example I use is coffee. So if you drink coffee every single day, make sure the coffee that you're drinking is organic. That is way more important than maybe, you know, that apple that you only eat once every 2 weeks. Maybe that wouldn't have to be organic. But definitely the things that you know that you eat every single day, then focus on switching those out first and making those organic. So everything that I have here is organic. So let's start out with our broccoli. Now, what you're going to do is, I'm hoping you guys can see my board kind of, yeah, you guys can see a little bit there. That's not too bad, you can see. I'm gonna walk you through kind of as I go along doing this. So because I buy organic, I do not fuss too much over washing my fruits and vegetables other than giving them a good rinse underwater, but I do not use any special cleaners on them. Now, if you are not buying organic, and the other thing too is when you buy organic, I leave the skins on everything. If you're not buying organic, then you're going to want to make sure you give them a really good wash. Of course, you're not going to be able to wash away all of the herbicides, the pesticides, and the fungicides, but you will get some of it off. But remember, that stuff actually seeps through into the fruit or the vegetable, so you can't wash it away completely. But a little bit is better than nothing. Now, here's a tip for you too. So I'm going to give you lots of tips as we go along. Please do not waste your money on any special cleaners. I'm going to give you a tip. It's going to save you a ton of money. So if you typically buy these like vegetable washes, you don't have to do that. Save your money, stop buying them. A really quick and easy thing to do is when you come home from the grocery store and you're unloading your groceries, then get your things out like your apples or your broccoli or your onions, put them in a big bowl. You can even just use a big bowl like this, and then fill it with water, and you can put like a tablespoon or two of hydrogen peroxide, 3% food grade hydrogen peroxide. You can find it pretty much anywhere. In fact, you can probably find it in most grocery stores. And just kind of give everything a good, bath in that, and then a quick rinse, and that does it. And hydrogen peroxide, again, make sure it's food grade. It's so cheap. Another tip that you can do instead of hydrogen peroxide is white vinegar, another cheap alternative. You can even do a little bit of vinegar and a little bit of hydrogen peroxide. You could use both, but again, don't waste your money on those vegetable washes. You don't need any of that. Okay. All right. So let's get started. So let's start with the broccoli. Now, when I do my recipes, look. Cooking is an art, so I throw a little of this, a little of that. So while you're watching this, it may not follow the recipe exactly. I eyeball a lot of things. I just whatever I feel like adding in at that moment. But again, if you aren't confident enough in the kitchen to do that, I provided you with the recipe. You can follow it exactly as it is. But have fun with it. It doesn't have to be exact. Okay. You want to make sure you have a sharp knife. Oh, and the other thing I'm going to show you guys here is I have a scrap bucket. I make my own veggie broth with that, and I'm happy to share a link with you guys down below when the video is over so that I can show you guys how to not only save money, but you also know what's in your veggie broth when you make it yourself. So I always recommend making your own veggie broth when you can. All right, let's see if you guys can see. I'm sorry, the camera has kind of cut everybody off a little bit there. So I'm cutting the broccoli, and the broccoli you can cut to whatever size you want. Since we're not cooking it, it isn't going to shrink down in size. So just keep that in mind. It's, whatever size you cut it right now is going to be the size that you and your family are eating. So I'm just cutting it up and putting it right in here. Really easy to do. All right, everybody. Please feel free to ask questions below. Tell me what you've thought about the book so far. I know that we have women actually from all over the world joining us. How exciting is this? So we have, of course, we have a lot of women from the United States joining us. We also have some women from Canada. We have women from Europe. And we've even got some women from Belgium who are joining us. So that's really exciting. So I'd love to know where you're joining us from too. All right, I'm just going to give everything a quick. Now the recipe calls for 4 cups, but again, I'm just eyeballing it, guys. I'm not going to worry about measuring exactly. I don't stress over those things. But again, feel free to be more exact. The more you cook, the more confident you'll get in the kitchen, and the more you'll be okay with experimenting. All right. I always recommend you use a sharp knife because you will actually have more accidents in the kitchen with a dull knife. So make sure you have a nice sharp knife that you use. This way you are not cutting yourself. All right. So remember, this is broccoli is a cruciferous vegetable. This is number 1 on her Dr. Funk's breast health superfood list. All of this amazing color, this beautiful green color. So the phytonutrients that I was talking about earlier, give it all, look at that. Broccoli falling on the floor too. It gives it this beautiful color, and those colors do different things. They help our bodies in different ways. If you've gone through my Thrive 45 nutrition course, there's a module in there. I give you an actual chart that tells you all the different colors in the plants and all the benefits, all the health benefits of those different colors. I tell my clients all the time, eat the rainbow. You want to make sure you're eating lots of different colors, lots of different plant colors. This is a great salad to take with you. If you're going someplace, either a cookout or you're going to somebody's house. This salad is best after it's been refrigerated for a little while. So all the flavors actually have an opportunity to mix together. So, it tastes great as soon as you're done making it, but I do find I like it better after it's been sitting in the refrigerator for a little while and all the flavors get to blend. All right, so I'm going to leave it at that. That's a good amount. All right, let's see here. Next thing up is going to be the apples. So your recipe, if you're following the written recipe, calls for 3 apples. I am actually going to save you time so you don't have to watch me cut up 3 apples. I am only cutting up 1 apple. And again, remember what we talked about in the book, what Dr. Funk talked about was that the skins are where you get a lot of the nutrition from the apples. So I would definitely recommend apples be the thing that you're buying organic, so you can leave those skins on. I do not recommend you leave the skins on if you're not buying organic. Apples are one of the highest sprayed vegetables. So they're going to have a lot of residue on them, a lot of those herbicides, the pesticides, the fungicides that I talked about. So definitely invest in organic apples. Now, again, we have women joining us from all over the world, and that's so exciting. I am out of Virginia, which is the East Coast of the United States, and this is actually apple season for us. So the apples right now are so incredible. They're so fresh. We have several orchards near our house. Within a nice drive, we can go for the day and go apple picking. So yeah, if it is apple season where you are in your part of the world now, that's the best way to do it. I always like to buy fresh. I like to buy from a farmer's market, especially if I can. That's always the best place to get the freshest. Okay, smells amazing. You guys can't smell that, but it smells amazing. Okay. Next thing is a red onion. So again, this was on her top 10 superfoods was the onions. Now notice it's a red onion. That's what the recipe calls for. If you don't have a red onion, Feel free to use whatever kind you have. If you have a yellow onion, a white onion, but remember that the color is where all of the nutrients are. Not to say yellow and white onions don't have those nutrients in them, they absolutely do, but there's different health benefits to all the different colors. So change it up, switch it up a little bit. So if you find yourself, if you cook and you use a lot of, like I know yellow onion is the most popular. If you find yourself using those a lot, switch it up. Buy a red onion next time you go to the grocery store. And you are getting the extra health benefits of the color red. You can smell this too. Okay, here's a trick for you. I don't know if you guys cry at all when you cut onions. I'm starting to now. So when I wear my contacts, I don't get that. But I'm not wearing my contacts today, so I can feel the tears coming on a little bit. If you refrigerate your onions a few hours prior to using them, or even if that's where you just store them, cold onions you won't cry. So that helps. All right. We like our onions really small. So I'm going to give it a good chop here. And again, I'm not measuring out. I'm not being particular about it, but the recipe does call for a 1/4 cup of red onions. This, I'm going to guess, is pretty close. If you guys are just joining us, let me know. Hop on. All right. There we go. Throw those in there. I love one-pot meals. I love when you can just throw everything right into the pot. All right, let me just wash my hands. A lot of you who are in our membership area that have access to all of our recipes, you'll see I am big on one-pot meals. I really am. It makes life a whole lot easier. All right, now the next ingredient is craisins. My grocery store did not have craisins that did not have sugar on them. So those are dried. Craisins are like dried cranberries. They're kind of like a mix between a cranberry and a raisin. But I always make sure that whenever I buy my raisins or my cranberries or whatever that I'm buying, that is the only ingredient. I don't want to have any kind of oils or even sweeteners. Like some of these actually have like added sugars. So just make sure whatever you're buying is just that straight up ingredient. So in this case, I bought the raisins because that's all my grocery store had. Even though the recipe calls for craisins, it's okay. You can just use raisins. And this is half a cup, but I don't know if you guys can see. I'm literally just, I don't know. I'm going to guess that's about a half a cup. Not worried about it. Okay, the next ingredient is sunflower seeds. Now, my grocery store did not have sunflower seeds. So again, this is where you can be creative. So I'm going to swap out pumpkin seeds. And actually, it's kind of perfect right now because at the time of this recording, it's October and it is pumpkin season for us. So, so I'm going to use pumpkin seeds, but use whatever kind of seeds you have on hand. It's okay. And the recipe says half a cup, but I'm just going to, I don't know. It looks like a half a cup to me. All right, who's on here? Let me know if you guys are on here. Let me see. Hey, Connie. Hey, Kelly. This section that you read, let's see. Okay, let me just get some questions here. Hey, Kelly, the section that you read was the #1 section that I highlighted because my mother died of cancer. Oh, Connie. Which started in her breasts and spread to her liver. So I was led to believe that I should start getting mammograms at the age of 30 because I was in the highest risk category of developing breast cancer. Oh, Connie, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to hear that about your mom. But I am happy that you are learning and you are empowering yourself with this information. I'm a firm believer that we need to educate women on all of this. And then of course it's up to us. Like that's the empowerment part. Like it's totally up to us if we want to move in this direction, if we want to adopt this type of diet and lifestyle, it's our choice, but we should be given the information, right? So that we can make the best choice for ourselves. So thank you so much for sharing that, Connie. Hey, Christine. Christine's watching too. Good to see you. Thanks for hopping on. All right. Where are we up to? I feel like when I get interrupted, right, with my kids. Okay, so that was all the ingredients for the apple broccoli salad. Now we are going to make the dressing. And of course, this is taking longer because I'm talking with all of you. If I were doing this and not chatting with you as I was going along, I could literally bang out the salad in 5 minutes and it's done. Another tip that I recommend is always make more than what you need for that meal. this is a huge tip. I use it all the time. I never cook enough for just that one meal. My family just got used to years ago. We eat leftovers in this house. So I'm good now. Sadly, it's just my husband and I now. All of my kids are grown and they've moved out off at college or doing the adulting thing. So I don't have to make as much, but I'm going to make this salad a decent size so that my husband and I have some for tonight's dinner. And then I know he'll take some with him to work tomorrow, and I'm going to have some for lunch tomorrow. So I'm going to get 2 or even 3 meals out of it. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how you can do that and make all the meat eaters happy in your family. So I'll do that at the end. So always cook once, eat twice, or even 3 times. I always cook in bulk because if I'm going to make the mess in my kitchen, it's not any more work for me to just make double or triple the recipe. All right, so now let's move on to the dressing. All right, let me move this over and get my handy dandy. Those of you that know me know how much I love my Vitamix. The recipe for so the dressing that we're making for this salad you do not need a blender. I'm just being lazy because I don't want to chop up my garlic. So I'm just throwing it in my blender and blending it out. If you do not have a blender, do not worry about it. You can just chop up your garlic, just follow the directions on the recipe, chop up your garlic, and then you can just add it in and stir everything in a container and then pour it over the dressing over your salad. You don't have to use a blender. But I have a special love affair with my Vitamix. I use it all the time. All right, so let's get started with this. So again, for those of you that have taken any of my courses, you know I am not a fan of store-bought dressings. Many different reasons for that, but mostly because they add things to those dressings, lots of ingredients that are not good for our hormones. They're not good for our overall health, and they certainly increase our risk of developing different types of diseases, including cancer, since that's what we're focusing on this month. So making your own dressings is actually very, very easy. And again, for those in the membership area, you guys know there's a whole section on dressings, tons and tons of different dressings, because years ago, before I made all of these diet changes, I was the dressing queen. Like if, a company came out with a new dressing 15 years ago, you would open up my refrigerator and like the entire door would be dressings of every different flavor you could imagine. And then when I realized what they were putting in it, and I started making all these changes to our diet, I no longer buy store-bought because it's so easy to make your own. So the dressing I'm making now is actually a great dressing. You can just use it on salads if you want. I'm actually going to pour it over this salad, but you can use it over just a regular tossed salad too. Lots of different things you can do with it. So when you can, always try to make your own dressings. Okay, let me take this off. Again, if you guys are joining us, just let me know if you're watching. All right, I have a 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar. All right, so let's talk about apple cider vinegar. This is something that everybody should have in their pantry. Apple cider vinegar, you want to make sure you're buying it raw. So that means it's unfiltered, unprocessed, and it means that it's fermented. So it's going to have this thing, and I probably should have shown you before I shook it. But once it separates and settles, you're going to see this it's not really appealing looking. It's called the mother, and it is kind of like looks like something floating in there. It's white and it's kind of like floating in there, and that is actually very, very healthy for you. But just give it a good shake like this. So here's a fun tip. If you purchased vinegar in your grocery store mid 1970s, all vinegar came like this. It was raw, unfiltered, and had what's called the mother floating around in it. And then marketers came in and they're like, oh, that doesn't look really good. What can we do to get rid of that? And then they highly process it, strip away all of the benefits of it, and because it makes it look good sitting on a grocery store. So that's why you won't find all that in your unfiltered vinegars. So make sure you're buying the raw and unfiltered. And Bragg's is a brand I recommend. And this has 1,001 uses. We can talk about that another time, but definitely I always use Bragg's vinegar. Hey, Tammy. Tammy's watching. Good to see you. All right, so let's talk about, vinegar. 1/4 cup. I will measure a little bit more when I'm making dressings. Has to be a little more precise. But again, with the salad, I wasn't as concerned. But I'm not super particular. So I set up really quickly for this class, and I could only find my 1 cup measuring, so I'm eyeballing. So the apple cider vinegar is a 1/4 cup. It looks to be about 1/4. All right, and now the extra virgin olive oil. Make sure, again, you are buying organic. Try not to go overboard with your meals with olive oil. Olive oil technically is a processed food. A little bit is okay, a lot, not so good. Okay, so half a cup. I'm going to actually do, because I really try to watch my oil intake, so I'm doing a quarter of a cup, even though the recipe called for a half. And 2 garlic cloves. All right, here's another kitchen tip for you. You can actually, in your grocery store, I get these at Whole Foods in the produce department, they actually peel the garlic for you and it's bagged because I hate peeling garlic. Is anybody else like that? Like, I can't stand getting the little papery thing, but I definitely don't want to buy the powdered garlic because as Dr. Funk explained in her book, the health benefits of the fresh garlic far outweigh the powdered garlic. So I never use the powdered garlic. But I do cheat a little bit and buy this bag where it's already peeled. And I keep it in my freezer because it will go bad before I can use it all. Even though we do use a lot of garlic in our family, I still like to use, I like to keep it stored in my freezer so it lasts for a really long time. And the recipe calls for 2 cloves, but if you have ever eaten in my house, I double my garlic. So I'm actually throwing in a couple more than 2. Again, if you're not comfortable playing around with recipes, just follow the recipe as I gave it to you. And then 1 to 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. Please make sure that you're buying pure maple syrup. Make sure it's organic and not like the Aunt Jemima log cabin stuff that they sell home. Don't buy that stuff. All right, and 1 to 2, so I'm just gonna go like that. You could actually, if you don't do maple syrup, if you prefer, you could use a date, a medjool date, if anybody uses those to sweeten things. So you could buy those, make sure you take the pit out, and you could throw that in 1 or 2 of those. That'll add some sweetness to the dressing, but is an option if you don't do maple syrup. And then salt and pepper. All right, let me throw these in. Okay. Okay, there we go. And I'm actually gonna add from mine. You guys don't have to do this. But I try to not do too much oil, so I just added a little bit of water to that since I did not use the full amount of oil that the recipe calls for. Okay, who else is on here? Hey, Sue, good to see you. Thanks for hopping on. All right, it's gonna get loud for a second, ladies. Okay, yeah. All right, if you have a Vitamix, let me know if you love it as much as I love mine. Okay, and now all I'm going to do is just pour this. Can you guys see here? Let me move this out of the way so you can see. Yeah, there we go. So I'm just gonna pour the dressing like that. Yeah, you can see I'm gonna stir it. Pour a little bit more. Okay. All right, ladies, feel free to share. I want to know if you read the book, what stood out to you. Do you have an excerpt from the book that really stood out to you this week? And if you didn't have a chance to read it, that's okay too. That's all right. I know everybody's busy. So I joked earlier in the video, you can use these videos as like the cliff notes. I'll review a little bit at the beginning of each video. If you're just hopping on now, make sure you take time to watch from the beginning. All right, if you're catching this on the replay because you didn't get to watch it live, just post below. Feel free to post below too. All right, and that is it. So, oh, it smells amazing. So there's a salad. Look at all that beautiful color. Okay, so we've got 4 of Dr. Funk's breast healthy superfoods in this one salad alone. Just in this one salad. Okay, so let's talk a little bit real fast about, and again, remember I mentioned earlier, this actually tastes better if you put it in your refrigerator and let it sit for a few hours. Most stuff tastes better after it has been in a refrigerator. Just gives the flavors time to kind of mesh together. So, I mean, I would eat it now. It smells amazing and I would definitely eat it now, but you don't have to, you can put it in the refrigerator. So let's talk a little bit about those of you that are like, you know, look, I'm not doing 100% whole food plant-based, and that's totally fine. We're actually going to talk next week about how even just making small changes, for those of you that are actually in in my challenge that I do every single month, you guys know it's really just small, simple changes. So that's okay. You don't have to be 100% to reap the benefits. You're still going to get all these amazing benefits from eating this salad. So for myself, because I am 100% whole food plant-based, this would be, let's say, dinner for me, and I would have maybe a baked potato with it. I might have a baked sweet potato with it. I would actually serve this over maybe a bed of greens so that I'm getting even more fiber, including more of her dark leafy greens, which again is number one, along with the cruciferous vegetables on her list. So I would serve this over a big bed of greens. I would add some fruit. I would have a little bit of fruit on the side too. So I'm getting a ton of plants in that one meal. Now, again, if you're not whole food plant-based, or maybe there's people in your family that don't eat this way, I have those too. I live with meat eaters, and you can do this. So what I would do is this would be the main part of the meal, and I might make like a little bit of chicken for those in my family that eat it, but that wouldn't be the main part of the dish. So typically what we try to do is for the meat eaters in my family, we try to keep it down to maybe the size of their palm. And so that's about the size of the portion. So it's not the main starring attraction on the plate. The fruits and vegetables and the nuts and the seeds, that's the main attraction on the plate. So they would have a big, huge plate of this, and then maybe just a little bit of chicken on the side, small, little piece of chicken on the side, or maybe a piece of fish if that's the night that we're doing it. But yeah, so that's kind of how you can make everybody happy in your family. Because I know that sometimes for a lot of women, or a lot of people will say, well, like, my family doesn't eat this way, so it makes it harder. We can't use our family as an excuse. I tell my clients all the time, use your family as inspiration. So there are ways to do it. There's ways that you can incorporate adding just more plants into your diet, but also keeping the meat eaters happy in your family too. So you can just add a little bit of meat for them. All right, guys. Hey, Sylvia just hopped on. Hey, Sylvia, I'll make this on the weekend. Good, good, good. And it actually is one of those meals that gets better the longer it sits in your refrigerator. So leftovers for this are great. So if you guys have any questions, just let me know. Next week you'll get I'm trying to get them out on Wednesdays, but you may not get it till Thursday. We'll get the we'll get the recipe for next week, so that'll be a little different. We're going to cover some other of her breast superfoods, so you'll get that next week. And I'm going to try to go live. I'll give you the exact time and day on Monday, but I'm going to try to do it on Thursday again at this time. Again, if you cannot join live, that's perfectly fine. You can watch it whenever. It's just sits in here in this private Facebook group, and you can watch it whenever you want. So if you are watching this at any other time, then just post your questions below. I'm happy to answer them. All right, Connie, let's see. Connie said, you had another viewer in your class today. Take a quick look at your text message on your phone. Okay. Do you want me to do that now, Connie? I can do it. I guess I can. Let me check. Let me see. Okay, so Connie, feel free to post that down below. That is just so cute. I absolutely love that. So Connie's cat is actually watching too. That is so cool. Post the picture below. I want everybody to see that. So, all right, awesome. So, so if you have any questions on this recipe or any questions at all, please, please, please post them below. I can't tell you, ladies, I'm so excited that we have had over 100 women join us for this book club. This information is so, so important. It's what we all need to know. I wish I had had this information years ago. Again, whether or not we follow through and we start to do these things is totally individual and totally up to us, but it's so important that we at least have the information so that we can make those choices for ourselves. So if you know anybody who is interested in learning about this kind of stuff, please feel free to share the link with them so they can sign up. It's not too late because we're going to be together for the whole month, so it's not too late. And make a hop in at any time. Again, no pressure. Everybody reads at their own pace, and you can use me as your clip notes when I do the classes each week, because I'll kind of recap a little bit of stuff. So, all right, I'm going to hop off now. I'm going to put this amazing smelling. This smells so good. I'm gonna put this in the fridge for later for tonight. So I have dinner ready for later on. So, all right, ladies, take care. I hope you guys have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.